And our producer, Joel Spreadborough, is a big fan of our city's many landmarks. And in the studio to tell you about his latest adventure. G'day, Joel.
Morning, guys.
This was the clue. Where'd you go?
Well, to answer that question, I want to go back in time briefly. Let's go to 1877 when a pair of brothers from Victoria, Nicholas and Edward Fitzgerald, bought a site of a failing rum distillery on Milton Road. And they opened a brewery. At the time, they named it Castlemaine. And that was named after a brewery they already owned in Victoria called Castlemaine Victoria. Anyway, they started brewing beer there in about 1878. And guess what? They called it 3X Sparkling Ale. Today, of course, this place is known as the 4X Brewery, and it's kind of like, it's a little bit like a Willy Wonka's chocolate factory of Brisbane. And I was able to
That's a nice description of it. Yeah.
Well, for beer people, I suppose. Yeah. I was able to get a walkthrough with a guy who, if this is the chocolate factory, this guy is the Willy Wonka of beer. His name is Ken Wolfe. He's been working at the brewery for more than 40 years. He knows everything about the place, and there's just a little bit of magic about his passion and his knowledge.
Come with me and you'll be in a world of pure imagination.
Hello, welcome to the brewery.
Hi, I'm here for the tour.
You mean you're here to see Ken?
Ken, who's Ken?
You're about to find out.
Okay, here we go.
We'll begin with a spin.
Welcome to Castlemaine Perkins. I'll be your tour guide today. My name's Ken Wolfe. Well, I worked here for 42 years initially. And at the end of that 42-year period, I'd earned my retirement, but I only got away from the place, escaped for about 4 months, and they asked me to come back as a tour guide. So I went to the wife and I said, what do you think? And she said, go.
If you want to view paradise.
Brewing dates back some 6,000 to 8,000 years ago, and we have archaeological evidence of where it's popped up all over the world, very big in Egypt, but also Mesopotamia and China.
When did brewing start here in Brisbane?
1878, on the site of an old rum distillery, believe it or not. And our first brew came out in September that year. It was a Friday, and it was the 13th of September, 1878. Here we see the first actually was come up was the can, the 3-piece steel can that you had to open with a can opener. You know, the old can openers? So they were as strong as hell. You could stand on them. But that came out in 1961. The glass manufacturer's answer to that was the stubby, which came out in 1962. And you know what's interesting? For the first 4 years, they didn't call it the stubby, they called it the glass can.
So, Ken, we're at the front of the brewery now. We've just arrived at the big wheel. I've always wondered, what is the go with the big wheel?
The big wheel was first installed in 1919, and that motor ran off DC power. The DC power was pulled off the tram lines in front of it. People from all around Milton, Red Hill, and Auckland Vale would come here of an evening and would actually watch the big wheel run. That was their evening's entertainment.
Who's the guy in the hat?
Oh, that's Mr. 4X. So he's 100 years old. There's a lot of theories of who he was based on. There was a guy in the valley that used to sell newspapers, and people believe he was modelled on that. But there's no conclusive evidence. We just know that in 1924, he started appearing in all of our advertising.
If I could save time in a bottle.
Gee, Ken, it's a little bit noisy here. Where are we?
Here we are in our utilities or our services area. This is the heart of the brewery where all our energy is produced, but a bit noisy. Let's go on somewhere where you can hear me talk.
Sorry, Ken?
Yeah, where it's a bit noisy.
Oh, yeah.
If I could make days last forever.
Do you remember your first day at the brewery?
Oh, I certainly do. My first day, 12th of August 1980. Remember it well. I was 23 years of age. Back then, Courier Mail, big ads on the Saturday paper. Came in, did an interview, and they said, can you start tomorrow?
There's 69 bottles of beer on the wall.
There must have been a couple of hairy moments over the years, a couple of eyebrow-raising surprises coming in and out of the brewery. Is there any stories that stick out in your mind?
We've had some massive breakdowns that we had to deal with, particularly when I was the master scheduler. We had the brewhouse go down for quite a few weeks.
Someone else's fault, though.
Oh, of course, someone else's fault, yeah. But
of course.
Because I came in and saved the day.
Yeah, I was going to say, lucky you were here.
Yeah. So these are all public roads you can see here inside the brewery. And there's one famous story of a guy who came in here for maybe years in a white lab coat with a white carry-all. He'd go to our 750 line, which is our biggest line back in the 70s, and he'd take a dozen large off the line, freezing cold, straight off the filler, and off he'd go. Until one day one of the foremen said, who is that lab guy? So they yelled out, oi! And the bloke dropped the carry-all and ran. So he'd been coming here for years, grabbing a dozen large, going on to the train station and going home. Here we have the original bottles going way back to the 1880s. 3X sparkling ale.
3X?
Yeah, 3X. The original beer was 3X. You can see that one there, that large bottle there I'm showing you, a 750ml bottle. It's a 5X brand.
Ever any thought of a 6X?
Yeah, only to mark state of origin, the number of times we'd won state of origin, I think we got up to 8Xs.
Here's to Wally Lewis for lacing on a boot. Sometimes
That state of origin match where Wally Lewis was sent off
And Wally's got 5. And the crowd don't like it.
and all of a sudden the cans started flying onto the Lang Park turf.
Oh, I remember it well. I was actually there that night.
he's the emperor of Lang Park.
Probably wasn't good advertising for us. These days, of course, over at Lang Park there, it's all keg beer. And at half-time now, on a big state of origin match, they're spearing a new keg every 5 seconds.
Oh, it's a lonesome away from your kindred and all.
One thing I have noticed walking around this brewery in the heart of Milton are the floodlights. 74, 2011, 2021.
So all the way through this back courtyard here of the brewery, right down to the security hut there, which is probably a level of about 3 metres, the floods will go right over the top of that security building there.
Than to stand in the bar of a pub with no beer.
One year, a guy looking for floating beer drove over the top of those spike gates in his tinny, not realising that 3 inches below his prop was the spike gate of 4X, which would have brought him undone. The original forefathers who built the breweries built it up on the hill. We since expanded when we needed expanded down to this area here. Way back to 1850s, a little creek was running through here.
In the early 80s, I believe a gentleman by the name of Alan Bond got involved in the brewery here. What do you remember about that?
There was Alan Bond, fresh from winning the America's Cup. He put a large sign on front of the brewery which said Bond Brewing. We tore that down after we got a massive public backlash, particularly when we changed the address on the label to George Street, Perth.
How many people do you have working at the brewery?
Well, there's only we're down to about 160 now, and essentially a lot of the menial tasks have been replaced with technology, essentially robots. If you went way back into the 80s, we had something like 850 people here on site.
What do you like most about being a tour guide here at the brewery?
Just talking to people from all over the world, telling them about our rich history.
Simply look around and view it.
This is part of Queensland as well, you know. One of the 10 most recognisable breweries in the world. That's what I like most about it, sharing my passion and getting all the beer stories.
Oh, so good. Ken Wolfe and Joel Spreadborough there taking a little bit of a tour. But Ken, he's worked at the brewery for more than 40 years. And what knowledge and how things have changed. Great history there.
Yeah, and just the staffing numbers
Oh, yeah.
that he was finishing off with.
160.
Now,
Yeah.
whereas at the peak, well over 800 people were working there at the site on Milton Road.